appeals. Why would we begin this process? The controller should investigate. The attorney general should investigate. We should stop this process. What happened to the review, Governor Patterson? Why are we going forward with this? 3 years before the end of the holiday, before the end of the year. What kind of present is this? This is bah humbug. This is junk, junk, junk. I don't care how you dressed it up. I don't care how many reviews. It's junk. To all the investors, read the fine print. There's a lot hidden there. This is a bad investment.
Yeah, I'd just like to say the bonds are rated bah, BAA3 bah, bah, for all the junkyard bond buyers who are going to line up for this project. Junkyard bonds to evict people, junkyard bonds to promise affordable housing and jobs that don't exist. Junkyard bonds at a time when Governor Patterson is unilaterally cutting $700 million from the state budget. Ratner for money, not Ratner for everybody, not money for everybody else. Get your junkyard bonds here, right here, at Standard & Poor's. Thank you.
Why was this rated at this level? It should have been rated junk. Why are we investing in this non-essential capital project? Why is the MTA cutting back on services? Why shouldn't they be negotiating with Forest City Ratner to get their fair share for the yards? Why are we engaging in this process at this time? Why are we cutting back? Why are we talking about our deficit, but yet we are engaging, putting the taxpayers at risk, putting the full faith and credit of the state of New York at risk? We are morally obligated to pay these bonds in the case of default. Why are we issuing these bonds at this point in time when our schools are crumbling, when our streets are crumbling, when our bridges are crumbling? Who needs a 20,000-seat arena at a time when people need real jobs to sustain families? The jobs are overstated. The number of jobs are overstated. The fact that this will result in a stimulus to this economy is overstated. Everything in this review is overstated. It's lie after lie after lie, which is why they rated these bonds the way that they did. This project should be investigated from beginning to end. This is junk bonds, and I would tell all of the investors, be very, very careful. Let the buyer beware. This is a project that we should not be investing in. This is a project which should not bloat, which should further our deficit. This should not be a project that we should be supporting. It should be investigated. We should take a step back and investigate the Atlantic Yard's corruption. The President of the United States at this time is meeting with the CEO of Goldman Sachs. And we should say to the CEO of Goldman Sachs, it's time that we stop bailing out the banks and bail out the middle class, bail out workers, and that we invest in essential capital projects and not capital projects that belong to private developers. The reason why the state of New York is dysfunctional is because we're in bed with too many developers, and we care nothing, we care nothing or little about working class people. What we need is investment in higher education, in schools, in energy, in technology. That's what we need. And we do not need an investment in a 20,000-seat arena, which will only benefit the rich, because most of the residents in Brooklyn will not be in a position to afford to attend these games if they're even interested in attending the games of a team that is a losing team. These bonds are junk. And to investors, you should be very, very wary of these bonds. The best investors beware, buyer beware. These represent junk bonds. They are not in the best interest of the taxpayers. We will not generate revenues. In fact, the revenues generated will go back to pay these bonds. They will not inure to the benefit of taxpayers. Taxpayers will be on the hook. The full faith and credit of the state of New York is not backing these bonds, but you can bet that we are morally obligated to these bonds, and that's why it is not in our best interest. The prospectus is inherent with flaws, with faulty analysis. There's a number of reasons why we, again, should take a step back, analyze this process, analyze all of the analysis or the lack of analysis that has taken place with respect to these bonds. These are junk, junk, junk.
We're calling on Attorney General Cuomo and State Controller DiNapoli to look not just at the structure of these bonds and the lack of due diligence in vetting these bonds, but also to take an investigative look at the Empire State Development Corporation for the way that they have acted in bad faith, both in the Columbia University eminent domain takings and the Atlantic Yards eminent domain takings, and the overall actions of this most powerful state authority that has zero oversight from anyone that anyone has elected. The governor is screaming with his pants on fire every day about the fiscal crisis we're in, that the state is about to go insolvent, yet we are diverting taxpayer dollars from New York City to pay a pilot to pay this junk bond. The governor is also approving the MTA's way below market value sale of the rail yards, of these rail yards. There's a $200 million budget gap that the MTA announced last week. A proper sale, a proper competitive sale of these rail yards would fill all or most of that gap. We are calling on the governor to follow through on his promise that he made publicly just about a week ago, on December 1st, at a public meeting, that he would take an objective review of the Atlantic Yards project. And we are calling for him not only to do that, but to make it meaningful by stopping his Empire State Development Corporation from taking people's properties, and by stopping the Empire State Development Corporation from signing closing documents for the Atlantic Yards project. He controls the ESDC. It is up to him what they do, and if he's going to do any review of the project that's meaningful, he has to stop the project cold from moving forward. By the way, one other part of this bond issue is that there's something very strange going on.
Sure.
It is a scheme where a new local development corporation has been created to issue these bonds. They've been created not under the Empire State Development Corporation, but under the Job Development Authority. This project has nothing to do with the Job Development Authority, but by setting it up that way, they have found a loophole, they believe, that's the state and Ratner, to issue these bonds without the Public Authorities Control Board, which is Patterson, Sampson, and Silver, or the controller looking at this bond issuance at all and eventually voting on it. They have avoided that with a loophole that doesn't make any sense, and we're asking at the very least...
Not even legal.
We're asking at the very least for DiNapoli and Cuomo to explain to us why this scheme has been set up this way to avoid any oversight. Just last week, the governor, in talking about the Public Authorities Reform Bill that he signed, said that for a very long time, the public authorities have added to the enormous debt that have added to the state's enormous debt. For a very long period of time, the public authorities have operated really without any oversight and operated very much in the dark. And they have amassed crippling backdoor financing that has threatened the stability of our economy. Richard Brodsky, one of the sponsors of the bill, said $3 billion in taxpayer-backed debt was issued by 12 anonymous people doing the bidding of the mayor. Here we have 6 anonymous people doing the bidding of the governor, doing the bidding of the head of the ESDC, doing the bidding of Bruce Ratner to put a bond out on the market that has had no oversight and has been approved in the dark.